G'day legends. Today we've got the BMW R12 GS Enduro model. BMW Australia have been very kind enough to give ADB a chance to test ride this bad boy for a couple of weeks, and right off the bat, fantastic, loved it. Now, I've come from literally a dirt bike background, so I'm used to riding just dirt bikes around town, and this thing with all its mod cons on it, game changer for me, loved it. Smooth, powerful, that engine power is intoxicating, it just winds on like everything. Bottom end's great, mid-range is great, top end signs off a little bit. 100 horsepower is more than you ever need in the dirt though. So, right out of the gate, have to say, this is a fantastic motorcycle. Anyone that buys one of these is going to be super happy. So, when you buy them in Australia, they're suffering just over the $30,000 mark. They come with all the fruit in Australia. You've got your quick shifter, you've got your heated grips, you've got your various modes, you've got cruise control. All of it comes standard on these things. The little dash at the front is fantastic. The ergonomics on the bike is terrific. I find it very comfortable from a dirt bike point of view. It's quite sitting upright, so you can spend long hours in the saddle. The seat itself is quite firm. It's compromised between too tall, too short for most people, I think. I'm 6'2", and I find that a very comfortable seat height. A little bit taller would be nice, but obviously got various options you can buy in terms of seats. That we were lucky enough to have the pillion pegs on this one. For some reason, some of the earlier models didn't come out with those, but even from a pillion point of view, it's doable. My missus loves sitting on the back of this, but she hangs on like this. She doesn't hang on like this. But again, from a two-up point of view, it does it easily. I've got a great exhaust note, Marzocchi suspension front and back, and really impressive is the fact that you can wind on the preload here and you can do the preload on the front. So they're fully adjustable, compression, rebound, and honestly, for a bike that's almost 230 kilos, this thing handles really well. It's great on the fire roads and the gravel. It'll even handle whoops into single tracks. I was quite surprised. Where it finds its limitations, obviously when you're setting it over water bars, but even then, if you can land it on the back wheel, she just tracks beautifully. From a handling perspective, it really surprised me. This bike handles way better than it really should. To the point we went down to Victoria there last week and hooked up with a group of, should we say, mid-capacity adventure bikes, 890s, T7s. There's a whole group of, KTM 500s. And this one was obviously the odd one out, being a big 1200 in the group. But we hit the high country, we did all the big steep hills, the gnarly tracks, the river crossings, and this thing just cruised through it all quite easily. The one thing I did note when you play with tyre pressures on these, so they like to have about a 37, 33 at the front, somewhere in that sort of high pressure order, and it has tyre pressure monitors on it too. So on the dash you can actually see what tyre pressures you're running, which is great. So if you get a flat, she comes up and starts flashing at you. But on the same token, in the high country, it was really struggling in those big rocky gully tracks, so I let the air down to around 24 psi front and back, which is probably a bit lower than where you want to be, but it hooked up way better for it. You found the traction. So that is one of the issues with the bigger bikes. You generally have to run the higher pressures, and the heavier weight bike tends to push that into the soil better, but in the rocky terrain it's a bit of a catch-22 too. From a handling point of view on the road, it's beautiful. As a road bike, you can't fault this thing. It turns beautiful, it swings through the traffic, it is just, beautiful in the twisties. I find even with a 21/18 wheel set, which I'm used to, I didn't find any caveats to that in terms of road use. A lot of people like to say they run the smaller wheels like a 17 front and back from a road bike point of view because it turns in the corners better. And sure, it might do it a bit better in those instances, but with the bigger tyre diameter, especially the 21-inch front, I find, especially in corrugations and dirt scenarios, it tracks a lot better. If you've got small potholes and things with those smaller tyres, they'll just hit harder and a bit harsher in terms of the ride. So me personally, I prefer to go for these dirt tyre sizes. It also affords you more flexibility in terms of what rubber you put on the bike too. So if you wanted to go something more aggressive dirt bike wise, you can. They come with a USB charger obviously, so you can put your quad lock or any sort of GPS unit on there and rig up, track where you're going, which is very handy. The little wonder wheel on these things, which is a BMW thing, basically doesn't do much on this until you hook up your phone connection app, but for whatever reason we can't rig this one up on this bike. The exhaust note is great, it's got a nice burble to it. Shaft drive is just something else. These things are great, low maintenance. Basically bugger all servicing. I think every 30,000 you're meant to look at that. Obviously from a motor point of view, these things are super reliable. People are talking like 260,000 Ks out of these motors and no issues. So BMW reliability is definitely there. LED lights, these little fog lights that come with them are a little bit, Traffic can see them, but they don't really light up the day much. The guards are actually fairly effective. From a wind protection point of view, fine. I actually thought it was quite good. You're not getting too much at highway speeds. If you start punching on, then obviously you're going to feel the wind buffeting, but if you're checking to steady on speeds, they work pretty well. Clutch action. Now the clutch itself is fairly good in terms of how you can use it on the road, but where it falls down is in the dirt. So this motor is an old air oil cooled road bike motor, for want of a better word. They've literally just got that motor, dumped it into what looked like a dirt bike frame and said, here you go. So the issue here is the dry clutch, which you find in cars. Dry clutch is basically two friction plates melding together and they don't like to slip. So the point is when you're getting off the line and you start running that clutch a bit too heavy, for example, when you're going up a hill with two up at traffic lights, you can smell the clutch starting to burn. So they really dislike being slipped a lot. So in the situation where you're on the dirt, take for example, I was on a single track seeing how it was going, and then I was thinking, okay, let's turn around off this. I don't really want to keep going. And then in the pine needles, the back tyre spinning, the traction control lights flashing on, the clutch is having a big sook, trying to turn this guy around in these big humps. And basically they can really start to smell. So I find the clutch is a bit disappointing. The GS's all come with a wet clutch. For some reason they decided a dry clutch was a good idea in these. Now if you had the wet clutch in this, I'd think far more preferable. Compounding with this is the fact that the gearing on these things is actually a road bike gearbox. So first gear is very tall. You are literally idling at 20 kilometers an hour in first gear on this bike. So imagine just tootling down a track, single track or otherwise. If you're trying to go slowly, the bike is literally idling at 20. You can't go any slower without pulling that clutch in, and that's when the problems start. Now, if you can keep this bike above 30 kilometers an hour, you'll be in second gear and you can wind it on and just take on any terrain, any hill. Fantastic. But the second you start going below those speeds, that's when you start having to abuse the clutch, and that's where the bike does not shine. So in terms of a use case scenario, this bike is terrific on the road. It's great on these gravel twin tracks. It's great on dirt roads you want to go exploring. But as soon as the terrain gets a little bit too technical in terms of needing the clutch, take for example sand, hill climbs, anything a bit more technical, that's when it starts to feel a little bit awkward. Now the bike is 230 kilos, but surprisingly it holds the weight really well. All that weight is down low. These fantastic boxer twins are something else. You have to ride them to try them. So what ends up happening is the pistons are running. Just imagine you're a tightrope walker, walking on a tightrope. You have a big long bar. The longer the bar, the more stable it gives you. So as you're walking along the tightrope, this bar is giving you balance. Now these pistons are doing the exact same thing. They're going left and right. So they're effectively giving you this bar style action while stabilizing you at slow speeds. So while you are riding slowly, take for example, trying to do a U-turn in traffic, you can put these at a full lock and they'll turn quite sharply, almost within the lane, and it's just stable. So these bikes, even at low speed, are very stable, very easy to ride, to the point where the missus jumps on it, loved it. You'd be surprised that people can ride these bikes. They're very, very easygoing and forgiving. I'd even say that this particular model is probably more forgiving than the GSAs, just because the wheel set, the motor geometry. I was really surprised where I managed to pump this thing through. So I'm very, very impressed with the bike. I think it's fantastic for what it is. A few little tweaks from the factory and a few upgrades that could have made it much better, but as it stands, it's a great bike. It really is. Tank bag back on that BMW graciously loaned us. A couple of clips, easy done. I might need two hands for this one. Clip one, clip two. I'll show you the power on sequence here. On button, start button, and your various ride modes. So if you press and hold the button, it recognises the key and comes up. And then when it does its little boot sequence, now we can press the start button. Has a bit of a high idle to start with. There we go. It's a great little display. Heated grips, your auxiliary lights, which are these little fog lights, which don't do a great deal, but at least the traffic can see. You've obviously got all your controls here in your menu, up and down. As you can see, it changes our menu around. Fuel economy tends to hover around the 6 litres per 100. 5.8 is pretty good on a highway run. 6.2 when you're really going for it. You've got your traction control button there for press and hold. Comes up on the dash. Speed control, cruise control, my apologies. Set, stop. Your heated grips here. Notice it changes 1, 2, 3, off, 3, 2, 1, off. Just by pressing that and circulating. High beam. Obviously your indicators. Good horn. I like these aftermarket adjustable levers from BMW, very smart. I think this is a 719 option. Notice the 719s come with a few little bits of fruit. This is obviously the Enduro pack, so we've got the 18-inch wheel, the foot pegs, the longer stand. I think it's a different colour scheme with the 719, but the Enduro pack just has a few feature comforts on it. In Australia we get it all. The cruise control, the heated grips, the quick shifter. The gear shifting's great. The brakes, fantastic. They're actually a linked brake system, so when you put the back brake on, the front brakes come on as well, and it modulates computer control and does its thing, which at the end of the day worked really good, especially in the bush. So obviously when you put the back brake on, it's like a rudder, so it steers you. So if you're just putting on the front brake, it'll actually apply a bit of back brake too and keep the bike stable at speed and in corners. So it did function very well, and they're very powerful brakes, so they pulled up the bike even in gnarly terrain, even under stupid conditions, clay, mud, slop, and pulling up, going bombing down big hills. Good case in point, going down some steep hills into Vic High Country. You could put this thing into first gear and the compression of the motor is fantastic. You could just literally all the way down this hill, no brakes, no nothing. You just sat on the back of the bike there and let it do its thing. It's just like a four-wheel drive and putting it in low range. Very impressed. Another factor to note is that this bike is very wide on the legs. So in terms of standing on it, I find when you're putting your legs on here, I find this is a little bit intrusive where your leg runs, and these injectors are sitting out here quite prone. So it's not a great design in my opinion. You look at the GS's and some of the earlier models, these are tucked in a lot more. But it is what it is, and it doesn't really stop you from riding it. It would just be nice to have the whole bike a little bit narrower, more dirt bike style. Mirrors are great, no vibration, you could see out the back very well. The lights were good, suspension was good. Honestly, this bike didn't put a foot wrong the whole couple of weeks we've had it. I'm very disappointed to say I have to take it back to Sydney tomorrow to return it. I'd love to have this one in my stable. Thanks again to BMW Australia for letting us have this one. It's been a massive privilege to ride this bike, and I'm sure that this thing will sell like hotcakes. The retro styling, the beautiful handling, the all-terrain capability of this thing is next level. They really kicked it out of the ballpark with this one. It's a great bike. Thanks for watching.